You see the six-pack photos I post online today. What you didn't see was the version of me that would binge 2,000 to 3,000 calories in a single sitting and then absolutely hate myself for it. I was the person that would open up a pack of biscuits and eat the entire thing. Not because I was hungry, but I sincerely didn't feel like I could actually stop. And after, I felt absolutely disgusted, frankly, with myself, guilty as sin. And then, of course, coming to the naive conclusion that, well, I'll just start over again tomorrow, only to find myself back in the exact same cycle within 3 to 4 days. This was my life. If any of that resonates, this video is for you. I'm going to share with you the 5 steps today that helped me finally overcome emotional eating. And I want to tell you right now, if you do not fix this problem, you are, I can say this with authority, you are going to stay in this perpetual state of losing a bit of weight, then ultimately stopping, rebounding back up the scale, only to find the motivation again when you're so frustrated with yourself to get started a couple of weeks later, bang, you hit that wall, you come right back up because you can have the best meal plan in the world, you can hire the best personal trainer on the planet. It isn't going to make a single bit of difference if your relationship with food is not under your control. If you are powerless to food, this video is for you. Let's do it. This is why I'm so passionate about what I do today, because I was living this for several years at university and I'm blessed to be able to say I got a hold of this. So let's get into this, my 5 steps. Enough chit chat, let's go. Step number 1, I had to learn the difference between physical and emotional hunger because I simply didn't understand this. And once I got to grips with the signs and signals for each, well, frankly, it was like learning a whole new language around food. Characteristics of physical hunger, which is the genuine requirement by your body for energy, in layperson's terms, calories and or nutrients, are as follows. Number 1, physical hunger has a very slow, gradual, predictable build-up. You can feel it coming between meals, and when physical hunger strikes, it's no surprise to you. You look at the watch and you think, well, it has been 6 hours since breakfast. Yeah, it kind of makes sense that I am hungry now. So first sign is a very slow build-up. Second sign is it's very bodily as physical hunger. So this is when we have growling of the stomach, the hunger pangs. These are all very tangible physical feelings, of course, and you might even feel some fatigue or maybe some lethargy, some heaviness. These are all telltale signs from your body. It's saying, hey, look, it's been a while, we need some fuel now, give us some glycogen. And finally, number 3, physical hunger does not discriminate. You'll make any weird combination of perfectly healthy, bland foods when you're genuinely hungry, and you'll be grateful for it anyway. If it passes the would you eat an apple test, then yeah, we're probably dealing with physical hunger. Emotional hunger, on the other hand, well, let's start there, is highly discriminatory. It's highly specific. It's not just any chocolate will do. When you have emotional hunger, it drives you to there's a certain product that you're visualizing in your mind. For me, back in the day, it was Oreos, it was Bourbon biscuits for a while, it was Hobnobs. I couldn't just have any ice cream, it had to be Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And I couldn't just have any Ben & Jerry's flavor, no, it had to be cookie dough. Fish food wouldn't do it, and the Raspberry Ripple thing wouldn't do it either. It had to be cookie dough. It's that specific. So if you have a specific hankering or craving for a certain food, it's very unlikely to be physical hunger. Second sign of emotional hunger, there's a very fast build-up. Unlike the slower, more progressive, predictable build-up surrounding physical hunger, emotional hunger strikes fast and it can often come out of nowhere. Why? Because it is instantaneous. It's as instantaneous as you have emotional state change. It's when you experience a new trigger, emotion, or feeling, you may, through past experience, associate that on a subconscious level with food, and so it can come on like an itch that you need to scratch. There is no progressive build-up. Ask yourself this when you want to next eat. Has this come out of nowhere? Does it feel predictable? Or does it feel like it was really fast? If so, yes, this is very likely to be emotional hunger. Finally, unlike the bodily feelings around physical hunger, emotional hunger exists primarily in the mind. Don't take this 100%, pinch of salt here, because there are some physiological effects resulting from that and some biochemical changes when you have emotional hunger. So there is a physical degree to it, but it is largely self-talk. It's not going to be associated with the lethargy, the fatigue, the heaviness, the irritability, the hunger pangs, the stomach growling that physical hunger tends to bring. Summary, if it feels urgent and hyper-specific to the type of food, it's probably not real hunger, it's probably emotion. Step 2 is critical, and frankly, without understanding this, I don't think I would have been able to get off the terrible path that I was on with food. It's understanding the emotional eating cycle and how this is a beast that progressively compounds over time, and so it needs confronting now rather than leaving it until later. I'll put one of my graphics up on the screen now, but essentially you have trigger, emotion, or feeling. This creates, through learned experience, the association of, oh, we eat now, we've done that historically, let's find some food now. This leads to the action of, well, frankly, overeating. In most cases, it isn't channeled towards a healthy, nutritious meal, but overeating, even if it's healthy, probably exceeding in calories to get some kind of fullness, stuffing, soothing benefit, so you go really hard, even if it's a bowl of rice. This, of course, leads to a big dose of guilt. This, of course, then subcommunicates to yourself that you're the person that goes through this entire cycle. You are, of course, the emotional eater. This is not necessarily happening consciously, but it surely will do in time. And so you just keep yourself in this pattern whereby your brain really associates the trigger emotion very strongly with the process of eating, to the extent that it's really hard to separate those actions. Those actions being the trigger emotion, which is the prompt to eat, and then subsequently overeating. Those things become cast in iron in their relationship the more you repeat this cycle. So for me, it was understanding, hey, this is a snowball that I've been pushing down a snowy hill, up a snowy hill for quite some time, and so yes, it feels really hard to stop now because I'm so used to engaging in this behavior pattern to where it just feels like this inevitable script that I can't stop. And just the awareness of this was beneficial to me. It doesn't give you the strength automatically to stop. We'll come on to that shortly. But the ultimate point here I'm trying to make is the more you go through this cycle, the more your brain learns this behavior and will signal next time that you have a trigger emotion that, hey, this is what we do. And this is why it feels like you have no control, because it's such an embedded behavior pattern. So understand the stages of the emotional eating cycle. I'm going to talk about how we break it momentarily, but this is step number 2. For me, just seeing all of this in my own behavior, that each time I binged, it actually made it more likely to happen next time. That was actually, I needed that. I needed to understand that each time I did this, it was becoming more and more of a monster in the closet. Step number 3, this took me way too long to learn. I wish I had someone a couple of steps ahead of me to just shine a light on this and say, Ryan, you really need to focus on this. This is going to be a great cure to you. Identify your triggers. And I don't begrudge myself. Most people are blind to this for a long time. It feels so charged. Every time you binge, it feels hard to sort of sit there calmly after the fact and analyze what went wrong and what brought it on. But the point being here, what you'll observe if you reflect over your last couple of binges, you don't turn to food in just any emotional state change. When we talk about emotional eating, what you should observe is that there is a trend here. You are far more likely to associate certain emotions with food, and actually things like being happy, things like feeling relatively fulfilled, notice how they don't lead you to emotional eating, but things like stress and boredom, maybe some loneliness, overwhelm is a common one, the reward mentality, I've had a good week, it was a successful week at work, I deserve a treat. Notice how all of these things might encourage you to eat, but there are a certain series of other emotions that don't. You'll actually find there are some emotions, anxiety is a great example of this, that actually suppress appetite and lead to you forgetting about food. Or perhaps when you're just really distracted and busy, you don't think about food all that much. In other words, what I'm meaning to say here, if you read between the lines, binge eating is not as chaotic and random as people think it is. There are common trigger causes and emotions. You will observe when you look back over your last couple of binges that a couple of the same, maybe it's just one, but a couple of the same triggers are coming up time and time again. And those are the things that are leading to the binges, as opposed to maybe other emotions. So let's identify right now which are my big 2 or 3 triggers. And so then, when those moments arise instead, we'll talk about that in a second, you actually target those feelings correctly instead of throwing food at it. Step 4, by now you've learnt the difference between physical and emotional hunger and you recognize the signs. You've understood the compounding of the emotional eating cycle and how that gets more challenging each time you go through it. In step 3, we talked about identifying trigger emotions. Well, how do we then answer those triggers when they do arrive? Well, big insight here, and this is not anything profound, but I feel I have to say it anyway, even if it's obvious. Food doesn't fix internal problems. Wow, you're a genius, Ryan. Thank you. I never considered that one before. But food doesn't fix internal problems, and it is an important, I think, reminder here. In fact, it just delays them or maybe makes them worse. You stuff it, you soothe it down, you use food like an alcoholic would alcohol as that coping mechanism. It might distract and make you feel good for a very brief moment. What you'll actually find is it actually makes all your problems worse as emotional eating, because then you feel really guilty. So you've already got this charged emotional state in the first place, hence why you're turning to food. Then you get this big hit of guilt after the distraction is complete, after the chewing is complete. Then you're going back up the scale, so the next day you feel really, really annoyed with yourself from a health perspective. And not only this, but the actual problem that caused the emotional stress in your life anyway still exists, because food doesn't change that. It just numbs it. And so actually, if anything, emotional eating doesn't just distract, doesn't just delay your problem, makes them twice as bad. Hypothetical number I'm throwing at it. But yeah, the big insight being here is you're trying to solve an emotional problem with food. It's completely inappropriate. We need another release for emotion instead. We need to be okay at experiencing emotional change. It's part of being an adult. That's part of life. Some things are very stressful, difficult. Sometimes life is really boring. Making peace with that is important. But if you find yourself very, very constantly nowadays going beyond a baseline level that any human could realistically tolerate, the average human could realistically tolerate in terms of stress, in terms of loneliness, in terms of boredom, if your baseline for those things is creeping up, up, and up, that needs addressing in your lifestyle. And this is why I always say, even though people kind of, I laugh at it when I say it, but people laugh at this when I say it, because it sounds so ludicrous, emotional eating is not actually a food problem. Which sounds nuts, doesn't it? Of course it is. It involves me turning to food. It's a food problem. It's not. It often, in many cases, stems from something in your life. And so for me, when I go back to my university years, I was really bored. I was really unfulfilled by my studies. And actually, a lot of my emotional eating got a whole bunch easier to deal with when I went out in the real world and had to get a job and actually had to grow up a little bit and had a bit more responsibility, a bit more on my plate and a bit more on my schedule. And I found that quite fun because I was so bored at university, so unstimulated by my studies. These are all things that were solvable through my university years. It's only after the fact I can analyze this and go, oh, it was boredom. Like there was a lot of boredom eating. There was a lot of boredom eating happening there, and I associated that with food through learned behavior. And so for you, what is the correct release valve for dealing with the trigger emotion? This is what you need to ask yourself. These are abstract, maybe conceptual questions, but they can have really practical releases too. So we can think about healthy coping mechanisms instead of using food to stuff down the emotions. And common things we find useful here are things like walking. That's a big one for me. If I'm stressed, if I'm bored, going for a quick walk really helps me sort out my thoughts. I come back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I was that close to breaking and eating a bunch of chocolate, because now I feel like great again. Actually, it's the best I've felt all day. So walking is a great one. Some people like meditation. Some people like breath work sessions. Some people find value in something as simple as splashing cold water on their face, grabbing a very soothing herbal tea, so replacing the food soothing mechanism with a zero-calorie beverage like a herbal tea that just warms you up, soothes you, calms you down. You close that laptop, close the computer, take 5 minutes away from the kids if you can for yourself and have that nice herbal tea. No, it's not the same as tucking into 500 calories of chocolate, but it's something. It's some release valve. Talking to a friend, watching your favorite comedian, listening to some music, doing it. Oh, I forgot the biggest one, but I kind of implied it through the walking. Exercise, physical movement, the endorphin release, the neurotransmitters that allows you to tap into wonderful state change. Ultimately, when you're in a highly charged emotional state where you usually turn to food, you need a healthy release valve instead. That's your answer in the short term. Your answer in the long term, if you're often feeling bored, stressed, lonely, like you need a reward, there might be something, it might be impractical, there might be some major lifestyle change that needs to happen, and you'll actually find your incidence of emotional eating, like me, when I went out and got that job after I graduated, your incidence of emotional eating will literally halve overnight when you make this one lifestyle change. And finally, step number 5, perhaps my most controversial take. I know very well there are binge eating teachers that actually disagree with me on this point, food psychologists that disagree with me on this point, but I so vehemently feel this was a massive part of my transformation with food 10 years ago that I can't help but speak so passionately about this particular point. When the binge comes, when the desire to binge comes, I should say, you sit in it. You face it. You don't panic. You don't wriggle like a worm, you don't try to avoid, you don't try to stamp it out like a fire. That takes you into a reactive, troubleshooting state where you want to pour water on the fire, when you want to throw a fire blanket on the fire, where you want to use food to stuff the emotion. Instead, you pause, you take that sucker punch on the chin, and you say, no, not today, not this time, I see you. Because all the other times for years and years, you didn't see it. That highly charged emotional state came over you. Before you knew it, you were mindlessly in the fridge. But this time, I know what you're doing, brain. I can see why I'm thinking about food now, because I just had a really stressful argument with my spouse. I had a really tough work day. I've been bored all day. It's been a really boring week. I'm kind of unstimulated. I'm a bit lonely at the moment. Yeah, my relationship finished a month ago. I enjoyed a bit more freedom, a bit more me time. Now I'm kind of twiddling my thumbs sometimes on the evening and weekends. I see it now. I see why I'm uncomfortable, why I'm itching to turn to food. And I say, not this time, thank you very much. You take it on the chin. Yes, we can sensibly use those other healthy coping mechanisms I spoke about in step number 4, yes. But ultimately, we don't panic, we don't react. The speed at which the desire to binge, the speed at which a craving dies down is surprisingly quick. But it's so charged, it feels like such an itch that you need to scratch. You've done that so many times historically that it feels automatic and mindless, and so it doesn't feel like something that could pass. It feels like I keep suppressing this binge and then it comes up 1 hour later. No, you'd be really surprised. You sit, you take it on the chin, and you go, not today. And you know what? This is why I'm so passionate about this. This, for me, was the most transformative element of the 5 steps I've talked about today. You break the cycle. You say no. This is how you start to detach. You are so used to turning to food at every binge desire that just feels anchored. Like I said earlier, I think whatever anecdote, I love my metaphors, but cast iron, set in stone, that relationship. Well, this time you're saying no. And you begin over time to separate the trigger, the desire to binge, from the actual overeating. You separate those things. They're not as connected anymore. You keep doing that. Every time you've got the desire to binge, you keep doing that. A couple of weeks go by. I feel a bit stronger now. It's not perfect. Sometimes I still make mistakes. Sometimes I still do say yes. Okay, I didn't see it this time. I suddenly scoffed a bag of chips. I didn't actually see it. I didn't realize that was emotional. Okay, I made a mistake. It's not going to be perfectly linear, but a couple of months go by, a couple of weeks go by. I'm stronger now. This doesn't feel as connected. It doesn't feel like such inevitability. There isn't such an air of inevitability about every trigger turning into a binge. I actually feel a bit of agency. I actually feel some self-trust. There's a packet of biscuits there. I don't need to eat them all this time. This is a feeling that progressively gets stronger and stronger and stronger. It creeps in. And you realize after a couple of months, wow, I actually have a bit more resilience than I used to think. I actually am saying no a lot more than I was. That is the beautiful switch up on the compounding effect of the emotional eating cycle I talked about in whatever it was, step number 2. It actually starts to go the other way. Instead of turning to food, overeating, feeling guilty after you have a trigger emotion, and then more likely to do it next time, the whole thing happens in reverse. You get the trigger emotion, you say no, that strengthens your identity, your story, that you actually have self-trust, agency. And so the next time the binge desire comes, it's a bit easier to say, no, thank you very much. And once you've done that so many times, whatever it is, 10 times, that it starts to actually become subconscious, that it doesn't require, that breaking the emotional eating cycle doesn't require the conscious, I'm not going to eat, even though every fiber of my being wants me to eat right now, even though I usually eat right now, but I'm not going to do it. And it takes a lot of, don't get me wrong, force and willpower and strength at first. Once it becomes unconscious, subconscious, once you've done it so many times, this happens automatically. And suddenly you realize, hey, I hardly am even triggered to binge anymore, but actually I'm experiencing the same amount of those emotions. The difference is you just don't associate anymore all of those emotions with the action of overeating. And this is the beautiful thing that happens over time. But in order to achieve this, you need to sit in the worst, most highly charged, chaotic of your thoughts around food. You need to let it take you like a punch on the face. You need to use the other 4 steps I've talked about today, but ultimately, this is my call to action. You sit in that binge moment and you say, nah, Sonny Jim, not this time, not today. And it'll be messy. Like I say, you won't get it perfect. This is how you actually change. This for me was the big behavioral change moments when I just sat there and I was like, no chance, not anymore. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of this. And I'm not even gonna distract. Sometimes I go for the walk, you do a bit of breath work, etc., etc., etc. Sometimes you just sit there and you're like, no, I'm going to war with myself. I'm sick of this, right? And yeah, maybe I'm a bit weird in this regard, but this is when my deeper behavior actually changed around food. All of this, these 5 steps, that's ran over, by the way, ladies and gents. Thank you. Thank you for coming to this performance. I'll see you again next time. All of these 5 steps, this is exactly where most people are going wrong with weight loss because, like I said right at the start, perfect nutrition plan, perfect exercise program. You might even like eating healthy most of the time. You might, Monday to Friday might be a breeze for you. But if you do not get on top of your conscious and subconscious relationship with food, if you keep this strong association between trigger emotions and overeating, and it just feels so mindless, so inevitable, so automated, you're going to keep staying in this state where you get a huge dose of motivation, so you sort things out for a couple of weeks, you lose 10 pounds. You hit the wall, you come right back up, you have to wait for a couple of weeks to get frustrated enough and motivated enough again to take action, lose weight. Each time you kid yourself, you might try a different diet, different program, you can hire a different coach. Doesn't matter. And you naively, very fickly each time say, I think this is the thing that's going to break me through. It doesn't matter because you're not addressing the elephant in the room, which is your underlying behavior. There is a deeply held connection with food there that many of us have. Take it from me. You stay in this perpetual yo-yo dieting state forever until you confront this, until you really fix this. And this is why I'm so passionate on this subject. And this is why inside Slim and Sustain, when you work with me, we don't just focus on the food. That's the surface, and the exercise, that's the surface level. It is so important to get those details right, but it is just the surface level. Ultimately, and this is why I just think I'm a wonderful coach, to be honest. This is why I think I'm excellent at what I do. We need to fix the patterns behind your eating. We need to fix the behavior and your mindset behind your food decisions. It isn't just a meal plan. Like, it's way more than that. It needs to be way more comprehensive than that, because Slim and Sustain, the sustain's the important part. That's how we actually change, is to do this deeper behavioral work. So in Slim and Sustain, you get the full training. So I've got, oh my God, hours, my clients will tell you, hours and hours of, tens of hours of trainings on cravings, emotional eating, dealing with self-sabotage, how to deal with those screw it thoughts, get through the quitting points, how to get back on track quickly, identity, mindset rewiring, all of these subjects. But more importantly, we work one-on-one together to help you uncover these invisible patterns. And the stuff you don't even realize is keeping you stuck. Identify all these other steps today, identify all these trigger emotions, and put together some kind of game plan for getting through these terrible bingey moments. And of course, the massive support and close accountability to actually ensure that you do that. It's emotional, it's messy, it's personal when you work with me one-on-one. But if you don't fix this now, honestly, guaranteed, because I've done this, you'll be in the same position in 3 months. I can say that so boldly and confidently because I've lived this. I've watched this with hundreds of people now. You're at the same point in 3 months' time, starting again every Monday, but then falling again into the exact same cycle with food. And I'm looking for 10 plant-based clients right now to join if you're serious about fixing your relationship with food and losing weight. Apply below. I'll put the link to Slim and Sustain somewhere below. So fill out the form there. Give me all the details about working with me. Share your deepest, darkest secrets. I want to get to know the real you in that application form. So give me as much info as you possibly can muster. Even if you think, oh my goodness, I'm waffling here. Is he really interested in all of this? Yes, I am. I need to know the truth. I need to know what I'm working with to actually help you change. Not just this veneer of you. Give me the gory details. I'll be very candid in letting you know if I can actually help you or not. And we'll get you signed up to Slim and Sustain this April. If you're watching this months down the line, still apply anyway. We'll see what we can do. I'll let you know if we've got space. Okay, see you in the next video.